Hey, I'm Gerald. This is Terry. This is Shane. We're three brothers together. The next step in our room addition build is to lay out our joist hangers on 16-inch centers. And I'm just going to do this right here, right now, just to show you. A joist is 1.5 inches, each one of them. So, in order to lay it out, you've got to put a mark at each intersecting point. So you start off from 0, which would be at the 1 inch, and that's where your first joist hanger is going to go for your joist. Now, when you come to the 16-inch center, they're always marked red on a tape, and it would be 3/4 back at 15 1/4, 3/4 forward at 16 3/4. And that's where your next joist hanger would go on. And you do that consecutively all the way through your build. So 16, 32, and 48, right on through. So we'll be doing that. And I may not make any comments as we do it. You just need to know how that is done. And you can use a carpenter square, which is the blade of it. The narrow part is exactly 1.5 inches. And you can use that to mark by sliding the square under the tape. All right, here we go. Good. 3 inches shy of 16. I've cut my two first ones exactly 8 foot. That's the full width of the room. In order for this to fit between them, to keep my 8 by 16, I have to be 3 inches short to make that work. So I'm just going 16, counting backwards. 1, 2, 3.5, or see, 3 inches, yeah. 1, 2, 3, make me a mark.
Why are you having to cut it back 3?
Because it has to sit on the inside of my 8 foot coming out. My 8 foot, my room is 8 foot wide, 16 feet long. So in order for this to fit between the two, it has to be 3 inches short. These are 1.5 inches thick. So 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches is 3. So I have to be minus that. Shorter than 16. Measure off the top of the cap block. Terry,
If you got a level,
yeah, I got a 4-foot level, or I've got a string level here. We can do it either way. 4-foot level is good. We need to look at these and crown them. Hang on just a second. Need to turn this over. Let me explain a crown. A crown is when your material bows up this way across the width of it. This is the width, the length, and the thickness. So a crown will mean that there's an arch, a slight bow in it across the top. You always want that up because as you build, the weight will set down on it and it'll compress that and it'll level it out. So always crowns up. Alrighty. So we're going to do this real easy. Now Shane, if you'll come right here, when that gets leveled, just tell me and I'm going to get a length here. All right, tell Terry what you want him to do.
It needs to go up. Right. A little higher. A little higher. Right there.
33 3/4, the top of it. By the way, rather than go to the lumber yard, we simply had a friend of ours to cut this out on a band mill. It's all cut to nominal lumber sizes, which means a 2x6 is 1.5 inches by 5.5. Well, he sawed these a full 6 inches wide, and they're 1 5/8 inches or so thick. So I might ought to show you that right here. This is poplar. It's good as any. It's 1.5 inches rough sawed to a nominal lumber size. It's, instead of being 5.5, it's 5 7/8. And of course the lengths are a little long, they're not squared up, so you do have to square the ends of your material to use them. So anyway, I'm just going to use this right here as just a little gauge block. So I've got my length here, and that was 33 3/4. So I'm going to square that. That's where the bottom of my post will be. Now, poplar has a tendency to crack, and that's no issue. It simply seasons out that way. That's just the nature of this type of lumber. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my notches. We've already treated this stuff. This is treated. We've done that ourselves several weeks ago, as a matter of fact. So now as I cut these, I'm going to create a notch. That means that I'm going to create a spot so that all my material comes out flush. So I'm going to cut away on 2 sides of this post. One for this length coming down 16 and one for the length coming out 8 foot. So I'm going to cut away so much of this. So here's what I'm going to do. After I've got this post squared all the way around, I want to take out from this part right here. So I'm just going to use a piece of my material, no big deal, and I'm just going to use it and square around. And we'll make this as simple as possible. So there's one notch. So I want to get the other one on this side, and I'm just going to lay it on this post. This post is fairly square, close enough for me. So I want to cut out 2 sides of that. So the easiest way to do is to set your saw, and we're just going to remove this material much like our dad used to do when we was building barns when we were boys. So I'm going to set my saw right there and lift my guard, and right here on the back of your saw is a little thumb gauge, and it sets this shoe or this table and allows the saw to set the depth on it. So all I want to remove is what I've got. So I'm just going to set it on that material and let the saw just come down and touch it just like that and lock it down. So all I have is 1.5 inches here at the bottom. So I'm going to continue to cut away at this post. I'm going to make these 2 notches first, and then we'll cut it in 2. Then we'll measure and get our second one, then the third one. So it's just a matter of having good work ethic. Here we go. Turn that over. Go to Perry. Okay, simple process in removing it. We're just gonna just bump it a little bit. Okay. Okay. Now, you can see we put our 2x6 on there. We've now got a notch allowing this 2x6 to have a seat right here, which makes it very, very strong when you've got pressure coming straight down. So it's good. We're going to cut this little nipple off of it right here. Let me get right here, Terry, and see if I can get that off. We'll get that one in too.
Screws you're using too.
I'll get these 3-inch after too. Shane,
I'm gonna start here and I'm gonna go down.
now we're just using a 3-inch drywall screw. Okay. And you can see how solid that's going to be. It's going to be very solid. Okay, now we're just going to roughly square up here because all we're trying to do is just get the perimeter of it up. So we're going to go to the other end and do the same thing again. One more time. The next thing we have to do is we have to lay out 16-inch centers. And that means from the outside to the center of your joist. So we can lay out either way on this room edition. It's 8 by 16. It wouldn't matter if you come from the left to the right, but however you start, you've got to do both ends the same way. You cannot start at opposite ends doing this. So you start from the same starting point. So I'm going to lay out a few here and let you see how that's done. Sometimes it can get a little confusing. So you can come on over here with me. Okay, on 16-inch centers, that means the 16 has got to hit in the center every time. So your joist is 1.5 inches, so you measure them back 3/4 at 15 1/4, and it'll go on this side. So 3/4 back, put an X there on the side you want it. Now we're just going to simply square down, and square up and mark the height for our joist hanger. So I'm just going to catch a little edge here and do this on each one. I know I have to be exactly 5 7/8. So there it is. Now, when you put a joist hanger on, you want to be able to see these marks on the inside of the joist hangers, not the outside. Because if you put them on the outside, you're throwing it off one to the right or the left just a little bit. And sometimes that little bit can make all the difference. So, it just takes a little time to do this. So just 5 7/8, which is what my material is. And I'm just going to put that mark, and Brother's going to start putting these on. And we'll try to catch a shot of what he's looking at when he puts these on. And I've got different sizes. I've got these for full 2x8s, and I've got them for 2x4s. A joist hanger just keeps the load from pushing down and pushing this out of place, out of level. That's all they're for. They are a fine structural member, by the way. I love them.
All I'm going to do here is put this down. Put this right here level with that right there, and level with the bottom. Now you want to be able to see that inside line and see that bottom right there. Then when you get your joist in, then you can push this on up to wherever you up against it. But right there is where you want it, where you can see your lines, and just screw her down. Now I'll probably do this, or I ain't gonna do I'm just gonna do the outside right now. Then when I get my joist in there, then I'll go ahead and push this up there and put it into the joist and put it into the subfloor here.
Our building's 8 foot by 16, so each one of these joists has to be 1.5 inches shy of, or less than, 8 foot in order to meet within this rim joist right here. So right here's your rim joist on both ends, and we're going to cut them 94 and 5/8 of an inch. Drop them into these trusses, and so We'll get started on that, plus we're going to finish our layout. And because I started on that end, I have to start on this end with my layout on this side. Okay. We've just laid this off on 16 centers, even though it's laid out prior to that. In my personal opinion, I don't think that a screw every foot is enough for subflooring. I like it about 8 inches. So marking it off at 16 centers to match your joist actually allows you to put more screws in it. Most people will shoot this down with a nail gun or drive it with hand nails, number 8s. But I like the screws because it eliminates squeaks and it tends to stay down more solid. And when you use screws, you don't necessarily need, on at least an addition like this, you don't need the subfloor adhesive that normally goes with this process. So we're going to lay out each sheet before we put it down. We'll break the joint, and I'll talk about that later as we come to it. So anyhow, this is what you do, and it makes it easier to locate the screws. You don't miss the floor joist as you shoot it down. Okay, Terry. Here. We've got our subfloor down. It's shot down good. And you probably noticed as Terry and Shane was shooting the subfloor down, I was bumping these posts. Getting my posts plumb and under this, because the more weight that gets on it, the more difficult it's going to be to plumb those posts. We'll be adding some skirting around this to ensure that we don't get any air infiltration and under the subfloor, which will eventually radiate up through the subfloor itself. So that's the reason that a skirting or an underpinning, as they call it sometimes, is important. So we've got this all ready. Now, as you do this, your subflooring is not going to be exactly 4 foot wide. It's going to be 8 foot long, but it will not be 4 foot wide because it has that little tongue on it. When you compress it, it makes it less. So you're going to wind up being about 1 inch shy here on this point here, which is okay. So I've already went around here and laid off for a wall, and I'll come back to that again when we get ready to frame.